Vice President Kamala Harris was in Jacksonville, Florida, giving a speech today, and she addressed the ongoing issues there where Florida has just made some changes to their education rules as to how they're going to be describing formerly enslaved people. They're literally putting it in the books there that they received skill set for personal benefit. It's angered a lot of different people how Florida is trying to now redefine the issue of slavery in this country. The vice president wasted no time addressing that issue in her remarks.
You know what, guys? In no way, shape, or form were they trying to rewrite history. No way. Again, all they're doing is saying that some people, some slaves post-slavery, were able to take their skills and use it to benefit themselves, which is true. Some slaves, not all, but some former slaves were able to take what they learned to start businesses, start companies, start farms, buy land. Then again, some were able to turn a bad situation, which again was a horrible situation to be a slave, and they were able to benefit themselves post-slavery with what they learned. They were able to take a tragic situation and make it better for themselves. Which again, man, not all, name close, man, but some. Which again, is true. So again, we have got to understand that Ron DeSantis in Florida, they're not trying to rewrite history because again, they even say that slavery was horrible. Again, they weren't free. They were property of somebody else. They weren't free. And man, at times it was really, really bad. And again, horrible things happened to slaves at times. So again, that's something they said over and over. But we have to understand that just because you don't like something from history, whether it's bad or whether it's good, man, again, it shouldn't matter. It was still history. So again, man, the worst parts happened, and we got to talk about that. But some good things happened, man. Again, if you want to call it that, but you still have to talk about it. I mean, again, we have got to talk about history. The good, the bad, the ugly. We have to talk about history. And I'm going to put up now the clip of some of the clip of Kamala Harris, man, talking about, man, again, she went down to Florida and, give a speech about this. And, I mean, people have got to understand what she is doing. Again, this is during the re-election time, to get everything worked up. And again, they're trying to get people against the GOP, against people like Ron DeSantis. And again, man, they got to frame him in the worst light possible.
I'll tell you, yesterday, I was traveling to meet with some folks when I heard the news about what happened here. And our team and the president, is completely on board with this. We said, we got to remind the folks of Florida that you're not fighting out here by yourselves. We believe in you. We believe in the people of Florida. And so I decided to come and visit with you today. And, let me start by saying this. I am a product of a public school education. I was sharing with some of the teachers earlier, my first grade teacher, Mrs. Frances Wilson, God rest her soul, attended my law school graduation. I am a product of teachers and an educational system that believed in providing the children with the full expanse of information that allowed them to then, and encouraged them to then reach their own conclusions and exercise critical thought in a way that was directly intended to nurture their leadership. I am fully aware that it is because of that approach that I stand before you as Vice President of the United States of America.
You don't want people to think for themselves. You don't want them to have that skill. Because again, if they thought for themselves, then they might come to the opposite conclusion that you want them to come to. They might come to the wrong conclusion, according to you, the wrong conclusion. And again, that's something you don't want, which is why you're pushing them in the direction that you want them to go in.
So when I think about where we are today and who we are as a community of people, within the beauty of the diversity that I see in front of me, I know that there are many things we share in common. And first and foremost, we share in common a deep love of our country and the responsibility we each have then to fight for its ideals. That is so critically important on the subject then that gathers us here today. Because you see, when we think about it, part of true patriotism means fighting for a nation that will be better for each generation to come. Right? Believing that our nation is worth the investment in fighting for the children of America, that we will provide them with the information they need to go into the world and lead.
Guys, I'm going to stop her speech right here because, man, as usual, she goes absolutely nowhere with this. Nowhere. She talks about being a role model and traveling around the world and meeting with different people. But other than that, man, she goes nowhere with it. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to spare you. But I'm going to go back to Roland Martin, and he's talking to a couple of guests. And I'm going to comment to that.
I'm Matt Manning, civil rights attorney. Also, Michael Imhotep, host African History Network show out of Detroit. Glad to have both of y'all here. Matt, what really jumps out here, I think, when you look at what's going on, look, I wrote my book, White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds, the attack on critical race theory, the attack on DEI, the attack on affirmative action. And so what you have here are folks who are trying to redefine the history of this country. They've been so pissed off the 1619 Project. They're angered that African Americans and Latinos are now having their own voice, and we're seeing this thing play out in Florida, in Texas, in other places as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, Gary Bledsoe, the president of the NAACP in Austin there said, or rather in Texas, said, look, you know, this is to show that this is no longer the lofty goal of just educating students. And that's what's so problematic about this. You know, colleges are usually the place where people go to have an exchange of ideas. So in that space, especially, you would expect that there would be an adherence to true historical standards and the truth about history. But beyond that, a tolerance for something you don't agree with. But what we see now is an attack in our legislatures and Congress, everywhere. They're attacking this idea of wokeism. And what's so problematic about that is that it's not intellectually honest. Most people have no idea what critical race theory is. They hear the word race and they get triggered. And the problem with that is that it's denying people the truth of history, number one, but it's also the intellectual dishonesty because we know they're going to come shuck and jive at the next MLK Day event or next year for Juneteenth or whatever else thing that's politically expedient. They're going to shuck and jive for that when the time comes. But the rest of the year, they're doing everything they can to expressly deny us history. And that is an attack on democracy.
You know what, man? The thing is, people don't get triggered because they hear the word race. Not at all. They get triggered because of CRT. And I think a lot of people understand what CRT is. They do. And again, man, that's something we don't need to have in place because, again, we don't need to teach our kids that, you know, that laws and policies are embedded. Racism is embedded in laws and policies, which, again, is what CRT states because it's not. Right now, we understand there's full equality under the law. Again, full equality under the law, which is all you can ever have. You can't have any more than that, which is why the Supreme Court struck down the affirmative action when it comes to allowing certain people in colleges based upon race. That was something that was struck down. Why? because they understood that it's not right. That is discrimination by its very nature. Because again, man, you're allowing certain people in at lower levels, and other people who should be getting into college should be there because they do better. They score better. They're actually held away. They're not allowed in the college because of what? Race. And that, again, is not right. So again, race does not need to be a determining factor of whether or not somebody gets into anything. So again, people don't get triggered by the word race. They get triggered by CRT, critical race theory, because they do understand what that is. And again, we don't have laws, man, embedded with racism to produce some kind of inequality. We don't have that. That is something, again, we don't have that at all. We have the opposite of that. We have full equality under the law. And again, man, what a lot of people want to have is they want to have actual inequality. They want to have equity. Man, they want to have things in place that bring certain people down and bring other people up. And again, we understand that by its very nature is discrimination. That is unequal by its very nature.
With here, Michael, again, we're seeing the drama that's taking place, and we're seeing again how they don't want this next generation to truly understand what this country has gone through. And frankly, what this is all about is, again, as Paul Harvey used to say, now the rest of the story. And so
Right.
they've sort of had this other story that has been cute, but wasn't truly factual, and is driving them crazy. There's another side to this.
Yeah, Roland, there's so much going on with this. I was reading articles dealing with this yesterday. I'll be discussing this on the African History Network show this weekend. First of all, to try to do this revisionist history, and I haven't read the 216-page document that came from the Florida State Board of Education, but from what I understand, it includes controversial language like slaves develop skills which in some instances could be applied for their personal benefit. So when we look at this history, there were at least 262 skills, trades, and crafts that African people had in this country from 1619 to 1865. In the book by James Newton, The Other Slaves, Mechanics, Artisans, and Craftsmen, 1978, documents this, okay? But to try to reframe this history, and it appears like they're trying to make it like it was the norm for slaves who had skills to be able to make money while they're enslaved and benefit themselves, things like this. Yes, you have some instances of this, but this was not the norm, okay?
You know what, guys, man, this is the reason right here why I'm doing the video. Because, this right here is dishonest, man. He's saying it right here. It appears that what they're doing is they're trying to rewrite history. No, it doesn't. It does not one single bit. Again, they're not trying to do that. Again, I read through part of their standards as well. And again, man, they teach the same stuff, that slavery was horrible. And as a matter of fact, they don't try to cover up any of the bad things that happened. But again, they tell the truth about things like, man, certain people, not all, but there were certain people, certain slaves that were able to take what they learned and benefit themselves post-slavery. They were able to build a business, or they were able to own land. And, they had sharecroppers to work for them. But again, that should be a positive story, not a negative one. But, they had to frame something in such a way to show Ron DeSantis as some kind of a racist. And man, that's not true. People like this guy right here, and people like Kamala Harris, man, Roland Martin, what they're doing is they're trying to take a small portion of something, and they're trying to frame it in a certain way to make it look like what they're doing is they're saying slavery was beneficial to the slaves. And that's not what they're doing. That's not what Ron DeSantis is saying. That's not what Florida is saying, not one bit. But again, man, these people right here, they're being dishonest. And again, this happens over and over and over again with this stuff. And people have got to stop buying into whatever the mainstream media tells them, because again, they're lying to you. They are just flat out lying to you. But again, don't take my word for it. Go look up stuff yourself. Read through it. Look at what they're wanting to teach. Look at what they are teaching. Look at it. Take a look at it hard and look at it for yourself. Don't take anyone's word for it. Don't take Roland Martin's word for it, because Roland Martin's going to tell you a story that he frames. Man, he's going to get people to come on to his show and tell you a story in the way that he frames it. And again, man, go look it up for yourself. Go look it up for yourself. But hey, guys, if you would, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. Thanks.
You son of a